What does pride mean to me? I think of all the people who've come before me.
People like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, you know, the trans women, femmes, gender non-conforming and non-binary people of color.
It means helping other people to be confident with who they are.
Remembering those who have come before us that give us the rights that we have right now.
An opportunity to say thank you.
It's all about visibility, and I think that's really important in our community. And also, as we say in our household, and as it's written behind me, every day is a pride march.
Hello and happy Pride. I'm Michael Urie. We're here at Julius's, New York City's oldest gay bar and the site of one of the most iconic moments in LGBTQ history. It was here in 1966 that 3 gay men were refused service, captured by this photo. It sparked the first pre-Stonewall strike for LGBTQ rights and would later be known as the Sip-In. And it's hard to believe, but this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots of 1969. Over the next half hour, we're going to look back at 5 decades of Pride history, from the streets of Greenwich Village to around the globe. Of course, the modern Pride movement wouldn't be what it is today without the uprising at the Stonewall Inn. On June 28, 1969, on the heels of Judy Garland's death, repeated and relentless discrimination led to the defining moment in the fight for gay rights. And what started as an act of rebellion incited a revolution.
You can't understand the Stonewall in a vacuum. It wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been in the middle of the civil rights movement. You know, we're talking about black rights, we're talking about women's rights. What about gay rights?
The Stonewall was really a fire that erupted, figuratively speaking, but we put torches in the embers of the fire.
The Stonewall was just another one of the gay bars in the village. It had a larger dance floor.
It was illegal for same-sex couples to dance together, so places like the Stonewall were very important in the LGBTQ community. It was one of the few mixed bars, in part because of the dancing, which everybody liked. People
felt relatively safe because it was in that neighborhood, which really, if it wasn't the world's first neighborhood, was certainly America's first neighborhood. All gay bars in New York at that point literally were run by the mafia, because of course the mafia could buy the police off, and that was their main expense. Otherwise, they were just selling stolen liquor in dirty glasses to patrons who would pay 3 times what anyone else would pay for good liquor in clean glasses. So it was a great business.
Being in a gay or lesbian bar was really dangerous.
Well, the police raided gay bars all the time.
Everyone knew what the drill was going to be the day that the police came in and busted you.
The masquerade law was interpreted to mean that people had to wear clothing appropriate to their sex. So drag queens could just be arrested at any time. It's so hard for us to imagine now to what extent that would ruin your life. Well, what happened on the night of the actual Stonewall Uprising? It was to some extent an ordinary police raid, although perhaps unexpected by the patrons on a weekend night, busy time when normally the police would have been bought off. It seems that what happened is that one woman being arrested was really resisting. The police were getting violent with her, that caught people's attention. The reaction was really unusual.
What made Stonewall different was the fact that we organized and we said, we are going to put an end to it.
While there might have been 100, 200 people in the bar, thousands of people gathered and started to protest in a really violent way. People were pulling parking meters out of the street and using them to break in the bar's windows. It was really a revolt.
And the Gay Liberation Front formed within a week afterwards. And we kept that going by creating a march that would take place on the last Sunday of the following June.
The first Pride March, or was not, of course, called Pride March yet, is just as important as the Stonewall Uprising itself, because they decided they had to do something to keep this in front of people's minds, to use it as a symbol. It is in the planning of that march that they chose the theme Pride. Although it wasn't originally called Pride, there was a debate over whether the theme should be gay power or gay pride. And they chose Pride, which is a hugely influential thing to have done.
We wanted to be out in the freedom of daylight to celebrate gay liberation, and that's what we did.
Stonewall represents the idea that gay people or LGBTQ people, people who don't follow, say, the norms of society in terms of sexuality and gender, have civil rights, the same as everybody else, and that if you try to stop them, they'll fight to get them just as anyone else would.
In the 50 years since Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera made their stand at Stonewall, countless activists have done their part for Pride, giving their time, careers, and even their lives. Everyone is a trailblazer in their own way, but here are just a few of the heroes who have made a difference.
Billie Jean King,
Harvey Milk,
Freddie Mercury,
Ellen DeGeneres,
Rudy Galindo,
David Bowie.
RuPaul Charles, how about that?
Bayard Rustin is a perfect example. I mean, he worked with Dr. King. He worked on the March on Washington. He was a key organizer. He also happened to be gay. He was fighting on several fronts. He was fighting for civil rights as a black man, and he was fighting against homophobia within the civil rights movement. A lot of people knew that he was gay and accepted that, and others didn't. And yet he was genuine and out and true to himself as much as he could be. That takes tremendous courage. That's being a trailblazer. Harvey's a real trailblazer because he was the first extremely visible person within the LGBTQ community.
It is well known that I'm a gay person, and in this state, there is a law that says gay people cannot be married, but there is no law that says two human beings cannot love one another. I have a loved one. Unfortunately, he is too nervous to be here. He left.
And then, of course, he was assassinated, which got a tremendous amount of attention. His story is one that captured the imagination of more people. He was an inspiration to a lot of people. I had met Edie Windsor several times, and then she successfully sued the entire country.
I am today an out lesbian, okay, who just sued the United States of America, which is kind of overwhelming for me.
It kind of dawned on her that, you know, she was kind of taking everybody on. When you talked to her, you were the only person in the world, and you knew it. It didn't matter who you were. You could be some big famous person, or you could be a kid running up to her at Pride saying, because of you, my parents can get married. I don't care if you're gay or straight or whatever. She was just that kind of inspiration. I've dealt with dozens of hate crimes in my career, and I've never seen anything like what happened with Matt.
Shepard was brutally attacked in 1998, tied to a fence and left to die, targeted because he was gay.
For 20 years, Judy and Dennis have been on the vanguard speaking out against hate. I don't know anybody else who's had as much impact as they have. As Dennis says, you know, I'll be anybody's dad, and if your parents have rejected you, I'm right here. I am super inspired by all the young people I meet. These kids get it. They get that we have multiple identities. You know, they understand that if they're not genuine, they're hurting themselves. I feel like the work that we've all been doing for the last several decades and the work that happened that made my work possible in the decades before that, all of these things have created a climate where I think young people they're gonna blaze a trail like nothing we've ever seen.
Still to come, Paris is burning, Ellen gets honest, and the men of Queer Eye make over the media landscape. And how did a Polynesian Mormon known as Britta Filter become a modern drag idol? Find out as Pride celebrating 50 years continues. Whether it's a movie making history at the box office or a beloved TV scene stealer in America's living room, key moments in Pride can be traced through screens big and small. Let's look back at some of the most notable game changers in the media over the past 50 years.
When we were younger, there was no such thing as homosexuals.
When Billy Crystal played Jody, a gay character on the sitcom Soap in the late 1970s, that was a huge moment for network TV. He did have a boyfriend for part of the show, but they weren't allowed to touch, but that was a monumental moment. Paris is Burning was a very important film for the LGBTQ plus community because it presented a social and entertainment scene that really had not been seen before on a screen.
I remember I was a senior in high school, and we ditched and watched that documentary. We'd quote, and we still quote, that film weekly.
Why y'all gagging though?
The movie Philadelphia, played by an A-list star, Tom Hanks, who not only was gay but was HIV positive, people were still not sure that general audiences were gonna even see the film. but obviously it was a huge hit. I vividly remember seeing Boys Don't Cry. It introduced a lot of people, myself included, to a trans person. And this was 20 years ago. Even though Brokeback Mountain was an independent film, that's a movie that presented a relationship between two guys who you would never know were gay. And I think that gave a lot of people the courage to confront their sexuality or talk about their sexuality in their own lives. Reality television can introduce audiences to someone that the general viewer might not already know in their lives. And that's what Pedro Zamora did.
Every time I tell somebody I am HIV positive, it's as hard as the first time I did it.
Even when I was doing Queer Eye, I thought, my God, if this guy can be on TV and be so open and courageous, I can certainly tell people to throw away their pleated khakis.
There was something about the Fab Five from Queer Eye inserting themselves into the lives of these straight guys who needed all the fashion and wardrobe help that they could get. Ellen DeGeneres' coming out episode of her sitcom in 1997 was gargantuan. There were 42 million people watching that episode. Nothing on TV gets 42 million viewers anymore, not even Game of Thrones.
We're here, we're queer, give us a light beer.
I love the fact that Will and Grace is still on the air 20 plus years after it premiered in 1998.
I remember watching Will and Grace, and it was the first time I ever saw gay people on TV. Just a little bit of visibility makes a difference, because if just one person sees themselves in those characters, they feel like they can achieve anything too.
There are only a handful of TV shows right now where every episode seems to be an event, and RuPaul's Drag Race definitely fits that bill.
RuPaul's Drag Race is my sports. Some people watch football, I watch Ru.
I think the really cool thing about RuPaul's Drag Race and why it resonates so much with people is that it's a show about people embracing who they are.
All the years that I felt ignored or dismissed in this film and television space, all of those years, and it's been a lot of years. And then Pose came along, and it was everything I ever dreamed of.
And that is how you do a ball.
Members of the LGBTQ community across all identities and backgrounds have one thing in common: coming out. They do it every day. It is a uniquely personal part of everyone's journey. Here are a few familiar faces who decided to share theirs.
Hi, my name is Adam Rippon.
I'm Molly Bernard.
I'm Leah DeLaria.
I'm Carson Kressley.
My name is Isis King.
A lot of people know me from Broadway. I won a Tony and a Grammy for Kinky Boots.
I was 19 when we did the pilot for the series, My So-Called Life. Ricky Vasquez was the first gay teenager on primetime television in America.
I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania. We were Lutheran, German Americans. My parents spoke a German dialect at home. It was very Little House on the Prairie. In the distance, you could hear quilts being made. Yep, that was it.
Being the littlest bull dyke in Belleville was really fun, as you can imagine. I knew since I was 4. I've always known. You know, it was tricky for me to come out to my family, and it was very tricky for me to come out to my parents. It was tricky to be out.
I had to come out to my mother 3 times. It was only through the lens of religion that she knew anything about it.
For as long as I can remember, I knew that I was trans. I always knew I was born in the wrong body, but I was always disciplined for doing anything that was feminine. It wasn't until I was 21 when I moved to New York that I actually transitioned.
I remember one story in particular where somebody was talking about gay people, and there was a friend of mine who said, oh, my family thinks those people are disgusting. And it was just something that stuck with me for a while. Being gay felt like a secret that I would have my entire life, that I wouldn't tell anybody.
I was adopted by 2 women later in life, and I didn't really have to come out. I told them that I went on this date with this woman, and I was so excited. And then I kept going on dates with her. And they were like, whoa, this is wild. One of my moms was like, did we do this to you? I was like, that's a little homophobic. No, but maybe.
When I came out, it was against the law in every state of the union to be gay, and I spent the night in jail in 2 states, Illinois for holding hands with a girl, Missouri for doing a whole lot more.
My family's reaction was a great one, and it was just like, oh yeah, it's fine. And I think that was code for, hello, we knew since you were like 4.
I just come from a place where we didn't have the luxury of the rights that we have now.
You know, I think if somebody like me were to go to the Olympics 10, 15 years ago, they wouldn't have the same response that I had now. And I know that.
I don't know who I would be today if it wasn't for Ricky Vasquez. It's very possible that I wouldn't be here at all.
If you are thinking of coming out and you're not sure, I can guarantee you that there will be a sense of freedom.
Being yourself and owning it and being proud of who you are is so important. It affects everything else in your life.
Anyone who is thinking about transitioning should know that you should do all of your research first. Make sure you're in a safe environment to come out.
I'm the first of a generation of people who could choose to be out from the beginning. The choice to be out all these years later has led me to this. And I am a homosexual. I'm not interested in hiding.
I'm gay. That feels so good.
Coming up, life is a drag. Thank God. Find out how the art of drag evolved from the New York night scene to the TV mainstream. Pride, celebrating 50 years, continues next. It may be the source of Emmy-winning entertainment today, but the drag scene wasn't always quite so mainstream. Here's an up-and-coming superstar and a Club Kids icon on how the art of drag became a vital part of Pride.
I'm new on the scene. I don't remember. I wasn't around in the 80s and 90s. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They took one look at me down there and said, you need to get out of the Bible Belt, and I agreed. So here I am in New York City 35 years later, and this is home. I was part of the big drag boom and the Club Kids, and basically, this is a forgotten New York City, but there were massive clubs, and we were paid just to show up, sometimes to perform and hand out drink tickets. But when you've got clubs like the Limelight, the Palladium was even bigger, Tunnel, I mean, there were 50 of us hired to give out drink tickets and host.
We got a dynamite show for you. The Pyramid put on Woodstock every year just because there are so many housewives and children that can't always make it to the nightclub.
Woodstock sprang from the Pyramid Club where I worked throughout the 80s. The 80s were a very dark time because AIDS was just devastating to the gay community. So my goal was to put a smile on people's face.
You're on drag race till you sashay away.
My roommate was RuPaul in Atlanta, Georgia, so yeah, he's a trailblazer for drag, that's for sure. Before RuPaul, the mainstream drag were things like Tootsie, where the drag queen is forced to do drag because, as in Tootsie's case, he can't get work as a male actor. Or Some Like It Hot, where they're escaping from the military. RuPaul is giving you, I'm fabulous, I do this because I do it well, and you're gonna love it, and turns out she was right.
I got money.
I've been a full-time drag queen for 4 years now. I was actually raised Mormon. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. This like fringe feather moment, sensible cocktail dress. There's all this different hair. I can be essentially any woman I want to be, any day. This is like an old school drag secret, but it's like instant facelift. When you decide to be a drag queen and you tell your family, it's kind of like you got to come out of the closet again. Because first you tell them like, hey, mom, dad, I'm gay. And then you got to tell them, hey, mom, dad, I'm gonna dress up like a woman and dance around for other people and make them happy. 3 pairs of fishnets, hip pads, butt pads, 2 pairs of Spanx. I started drag because I started with theater. I was so sick of doing shows that I couldn't relate with. Like I wanna create my own art and like have my own narrative and decide what I'm gonna wear and be my own artistic director. I'm a representative to so many other people, to Polynesian Mormon kids that wanted to dress up like girls and prance around the house because they were actually really good at it. I was meant to be a drag queen, and I'm a good one.
My advice for young, up-and-coming drag performers is quit if you're pretty or thin or young, because I don't need the competition.
After the break, we've come so far, but we still have a long way to go. We'll look ahead to the next half century as Pride, celebrating 50 years, continues. It's been a long journey for the LGBTQ community these past 50 years, through triumphs and tragedies, small victories and major milestones. But as much as we've accomplished, we still have a long way to go. So let's look ahead to the future of Pride and the next generation already carrying the torch.
I would hope that in 50 years that people will look at footage of Pride and think that it's a science fiction movie. And they will be surprised, I hope, that there ever was a time that people had to march for the right to love.
As I look at my children and then my friends' kids, I really see the future. Everything about their expression is fluid, and so I think that's the future.
If we, teach kids that it's okay to be exactly who you are, and we support them, that, things will continue to change for a positive way.
There are so many people who can use our voice and can really benefit from other members of the community speaking out.
Continue to include gender nonconforming and trans people. A lot of times we're lost and we're forgotten about. I think it's important for us to continue to have this conversation and to continue to love and support each other.
Not only were we here, we have always been here, we're still here, and we're never going anywhere.
Thank you for spending some time with us, and no matter who you are or what your background is, happy Pride.